I ridicule religion. That's one strategy, is let's just point out how silly religion is.
We're going to celebrate our belief in reason, science, and the power of the human mind. We are not here to bash anyone's particular faith. We are not here to mock anyone's particular beliefs. If it happens, but that's not why.
So here then is history's first unbaptism ceremony, right now. For the late Edward Davies. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the presence of math, gravity, evolution, and electricity to honor Brother Edward and to send the powers of SEAL Team 666 to rescue him from planet Klolob so that he may spend eternity with the kind of freethinkers he chose to hang out with on Earth. So by the power granted to me by the Blair Witch, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, e pluribus mumbo jumbo, expecto patronum, sususudio, yo mama. I call upon the Mormon spirits to leave your body the fuck alone.
The real trigger was The God Delusion, the book. And it was a book that I saw on the shelves in London while I was living there. And it scared me. I used to look at it. And I used to think, who does this Dawkins guy think he is? You know, how would he go about writing something like that? But it caught my eye, and I just couldn't bring myself to buy it and read it because I found it scary. I thought it would change my world, and it certainly did. But it did it in a very different way than I expected. It did it through intelligent writing and humor, and I think that really, you know, made me look at things in a very different way, to the point where I would bang my head and think, you know, how could I not see this before? It is so obvious and so funny.
Richard Dawkins is on.
Do you really believe that when a priest blesses a wafer, it turns into the body of Christ? Are you seriously telling me you believe that? Are you seriously saying that wine turns into blood? Mock them, ridicule them. In public. Don't fall for the convention that we're all too polite to talk about religion. Religion is not off the table. Religion is not off limits. Religion makes specific claims about the universe which need to be substantiated and need to be challenged and, if necessary, need to be ridiculed with contempt.
Richard Dawkins has always been influential in my thinking. I don't agree with him on a lot of the ways that he approaches. He's a little bit harder line than I prefer, but he still has inspired me to no end, and I'm very happy to be included in a list with him as thinkers that have contributed to this Reason Rally.
I mean, I do get a lot of hate mail, but it's nothing as extreme as when I do a video on Islam. That's when things get interesting.
There is a popular belief that the Islamic fundamentalists are just a minority and the most Muslims are moderate. How many moderate Muslims have opposed the numerous fatwas that fundamentalists throughout the world have been issued against people?
Salman Rushdie.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the sentence, the death sentence that was given to him for his book, The Satanic Verses?
That's a very interesting question. I think that it's difficult for me to. I think that there is this thing called freedom of expression, and no matter how. So I guess when I'm talking out, I don't agree with a death sentence being issued against him. I think what he did, particularly claiming to be Muslim, was was unexcusable. There's no justification in the name of literature to do what he did, because the Prophet Muhammad and his wives, there are certain things that are off limits for ridicule.
I said, the Prophet was not a man of good character. Rather, he was a liar, charlatan, sexist, rapist, pedophile, and a killer.
There were some death threats, which was fun. But I'm not scared. I don't really care. I think that when people make death threats, they don't actually want to hurt you. I mean, if you want to hurt somebody, you don't warn them in advance. So I think it's a scare tactic to shut us up.
We've had the windows shot out of our house twice. We've had innocent animals slaughtered and put on the front porch. Swastikas and crucifixes painted on the house, tires slashed, beer bottles, feces thrown at the house. That's just in Albuquerque where we live.
It is hiding behind the label of freedom of speech when it's actually intended and its design is to do something totally different. It's actually hate speech. It's something that is denigrating a figure that is central to so many, 1.5 billion people. He's so revered by that many people.
If they don't accept Jesus as their Savior, and what I believe is, yes, they are in fact going to hell.
Saying that I'm going to burn in a fire eternally is so much worse than me saying, well, I don't believe the same things you do. In fact, I find your beliefs a little bit silly. But I am the jerk, not the person who says I'm going to hell.
You are deliberately doing something to inflame the passions of these folk.
Do you think that should be illegal too?
Yeah. I think it should, just like if you go out here and just beat up somebody on the street because you don't like them, that's one thing. But if you target someone to beat them up in the United States, it could be classified as a hate crime. And so to write,
But words are very different than actually physical violence.
Huh?
Words are very different than targeting somebody to actually...
Yeah, but if your words are inciting people to violence, this is the point.
But were his words actually telling people to beat up Muslims?
No, because it's as if someone, and I'm not equating it, it's not totally synonymous, but in the African American community in particular, which is all I can speak about, if someone said something about your mother, that would start a fight.
My dear friend Christina Redd mentioned yesterday that beliefs should not be respected simply because people hold them.
You have lyrics that you've sung that says, I want to conquer the world and give all the idiots a brand new religion. If you had the opportunity and the power, would you conquer the world, and what would you replace their religion with?
Okay, well, so now I feel defensive.
I'm not trying to.
Because
it's the question.
No, it's a fine question. I just want to point out, again, our lyrics are like, hopefully emulating the songs that we admire the most and the entertainment that we admire the most, be it movies or comedy routines. And that is, they have a lot of satire in them and a lot of irony. Mm-hmm. And so half the time when we write a song, or when I write a lyric that says something, the idea is not to interpret it literally. And that song is a parody. It's sort of a cynical view of religion in wanting to accumulate a following and disparage the flock and reduce your language to the simplest terms. And so that's kind of why those words, seem kind of harsh. It really is a parody.
The truth is, we are allowed to criticize all religions, but not Islam. It is an accepted idea that there should be a limit to freedom of expression.
And if the individual doesn't know, if they're so been under a rock for so long that they don't know, then this is where the state should come in.
It's not so much the actual words themselves, it's knowing the reaction that
right, the reaction that you're going to cause. I mean, for 1 second, do you think that it would be tolerated for people to make those kinds of statements about other faith communities or the prophets of other faith communities, if they knew that this would create a certain ripple effect, it just wouldn't happen.
But you, I mean, you yourself have said you don't believe that Jesus actually rose from the dead.
Right.
Now, if there are Christians out there who would start killing and rioting because you said that, would that mean that you shouldn't say such a thing?
It's totally different.
The motherfucker, fucking fuck the motherfucker, fuck the motherfucker, fuck the motherfucking Pope. Fuck the motherfucker and fuck you, motherfucker, if you think that motherfucker is sacred. If you cover for another motherfucker who's a kitty fucker, fuck you, you're no better than the motherfucking rapist. And if you don't like the swearing this motherfucker forced from me and reckon it shows moral or intellectual paucity, then fuck you, motherfucker. This is language one employs, but one is a little bit cross at motherfuckers fucking boys. Yep. And I don't give a fuck what any other motherfucker believes about Jesus and his motherfucking mother.
I got an interesting tweet here from God. Yeah, I know it's a Twitter account, God, who wrote, "Enjoy your Reason Rally, atheists. It's the only holiday you're ever gonna get."
There are many people who will not respond favorably to their beliefs being ridiculed, but I suspect there are even more people who haven't really got very strong beliefs anyway, and who kind of sit on the fence without realizing that they are sitting on a fence, who've been perhaps baptized and sort of kind of think of themselves as Christian because their parents thought of themselves as Christian because they were baptized, say, and they haven't really given it very much thought.
My mother and I didn't come to the same conclusion that, you know, we were atheists and we could talk about this sort of thing until we both read The God Delusion, like, hey, this voice is exactly how I feel.
If this motherfucking stupid fucking song offended you with its filthy fucking language and its fucking disrespect, if it made you feel angry, go ahead and write a letter. But if you find this song more offensive than the possibility the Pope protected priests when they were getting fucking fiddly, then listen to me, motherfucker, this here is a fact. You are just as morally misguided as that motherfucking power-hungry, self-aggrandized bigot in the stupid fucking hat.
Oh, I can't put this on tape. No,
Faith is the enemy of reason. The one thing every single one of us here must be united in despising is faith.
I did not need to read any book on atheism or secularism or humanism to be an atheist. I still believe that for the Muslims, the Quran is the best book that can inspire them to becoming an atheist.
When I became Muslim, it was just resonating in my heart. My mind had not caught up with my heart. And I gave it 3 months to try to catch up, and it still hadn't caught up. So I just embraced Islam. I felt this was the truth. And so I think that for me, it was not an intellectual processing. It was just, it spoke to my heart, and I moved on it. And I've been there ever since, but it was not cerebral for me. My embracing Islam was not cerebral.
My heart tells me that what I'm believing is correct.
And he said, I've always wanted to ask you, because you do a lot of material about God and stuff, but you've never answered for me the fundamental question of why. Why you don't believe in God. And I said, well, Sam, I don't believe in God for the same reason that anyone who doesn't believe in a thing doesn't believe in it, because I haven't yet been offered enough evidence to allay my doubts. And he said, but you don't just go through your whole life only believing things that you got evidence for, do you? And I said, yep.
A few years ago, I helped start an organization called Science Debate 2008, which has now become Science Debate 2012, where we're trying to get a debate between the presidential candidates on science and technology issues, the issues that will govern our future: energy, national security, healthcare. Last time when we tried to make this happen in Philadelphia, the candidates the day before decided instead that they would have a debate on faith. Faith doesn't matter. Faith isn't going to affect our future.
If the only way you can accept a claim is by faith, then you're admitting that that claim cannot be accepted on its own merits.
I call the product they're selling in the fundamentalist world the seductive simplicity of certainty. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's seductive when you say, here's the certain answer, and it's a simple answer, and I am absolute about it. It is the rejection of information. That's the point.
Now, do you ever have doubts yourself about Jesus or about God? Are you 100%? Are you 50%? Or are you...
That's a good question. I know that I know that I know. I'm 150% sure. There is no doubt.
100%.
I'm absolutely 100% without a doubt.
I'm 100%.
I would say 150%. I mean, there's no breaking that when you have that and it's something that's been a part of you.
Now, do you ever have any doubts?
No.
Are you like 100% certain?
Absolutely, 100%, 300%, as many 100% as you can be.
And he said, aha! You don't have any evidence for love? And I said, oh, well, yeah, I mean, sure, love without evidence is stalking. Sam.
If you ask a Muslim, where will you go when you die? He hopes he's going to heaven, but he's not sure.
But you're sure?
I'm sure where I'm going. Why is that? Not because I deserve heaven, because my sin has been forgiven.
Okay. Well, let's ask. You can ask that. This is a Muslim here. We'll ask him. Are you as sure that your religion as he is as sure of his religion?
Yes, I am.
So if you died today, do you know you would go to heaven, sir?
Absolutely.
Why is that? Why would you get to heaven?
Because I know the Quranic scriptures.
How sure are you of your faith? Are you sure that God exists?
Yes.
Are you sure that Jesus rose from the dead?
Yes.
Do you ever have any doubts?
No.
Now, why are you so sure? What makes you so sure?
I don't know, I just believe that he did.
Usually in normal human discourse, when we're talking about faith, we're talking about a reason to believe something when we don't have evidence, essentially. So if you don't have evidence, you have to have faith.
And is your faith based on evidence, or you just have faith?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of evidence. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that you can see, just miracles and stuff that God's working out.
We are so busy thanking God that we forget to thank people. Don't thank God, thank a teacher, thank a doctor, thank a scientist. When was the last time a poor sleepless doctor was thanked? Every time they save a baby, they're like, here it is. Today's the day old Frank gets a thank you. And they give the now breathing child back to the parents, and they look at the mom or dad, and the mom or dad just goes, I just want to thank, and the doctor leans in. God! Well, God damn it! No, it's fine! Thank God that dude doesn't get nearly enough credit.
A tree fell over out of the blue. Nothing, there was no wind. A tree just fell. And this was, I don't know, about 3 feet across, and toppled over, and there was a fork in the tree, and it was spinning. The tree spun, and the fork got it right in between me and scraped my arms, scraped both my arms, but I was okay.
And apparently the entire packed congregation of some 3,000 people all simultaneously prayed for Sam's mum. And the following Tuesday, when they went to the specialist, there was no sign whatsoever that there'd been anything wrong with her eyes. They were perfectly healthy. She was cured. She'd been healed.
And he's a Christian, and he believes in God, and he's asking why. Why are some Christians doing better than I am?
I lost my mom died of cancer when I was 11.
The religious have created all these perfect excuses for God's absence. And one of the points that I try to make in the book is Yeah, they are perfect excuses. They're in fact too perfect. They are so perfect that if God didn't exist, you wouldn't notice.
Do I wish that my mom had been healed of cancer? Absolutely. But in the sovereignty of God, I have confidence that He used that in my life to make me the person He made me to be. And I've had opportunities to share with other people who've lost their parents. And again, would I want it to happen? No. But you know what? We live in a sinful world. And because Eve and Adam took the apple, sin entered. It's in me. It's in every single one of us.
I mean, there are things that happen, and like, my dad calls them miracles, and he thinks that something divine intervened. I call them miracles because we don't understand it. And sure, there are miracles of things we don't understand, and there are things that probably shouldn't happen but do, but that doesn't make it supernatural or unnatural. It just means we don't get it yet.
To give you an example, if let's say it's something that's 1,000,000 to 1 odds against it happening. 1,000,000 to 1 odds against it happening like soon after you prayed for it. Well, there's 300 million people in the U.S. alone. So that means that those events, just by chance alone, are going to occur to 300 people a year, right? So that's a lot of people. So you could find 300 witnesses that say, yeah, 1,000,000 to 1 odds, I prayed for it and it happened. Yeah, statistically, that we know that's going to happen anyway, even if there's no God, right?
And I couldn't understand why a loving God could possibly cause someone to suffer so much. And in a child's sort of logic, it was, how could I be nicer than God?
For a study abroad, I went to South Africa, and we volunteered at an AIDS orphanage, and that like really solidified it. I was like, there can't be a God who gives a shit about kids in Africa. Like, seeing this suffering, like, why does God love America so much and just hate everywhere where brown people live?
Well, thank God. I just want to thank God for saving my kid. I'm just so blessed that God was, well, so busy killing other people's kids that He forgot to kill my kid.
And if 1,000 children under the age of 5 die every hour, as we've been given this interview, I mean, you know, probably, you know, 20 or 40 have died. That means if there is a God, He is either impotent or evil.
We have a grandson that was born with a brain tumor. He's blind in one eye. He's gone through a lot of surgeries, a lot of treatment, chemo, radiation, and some of that is now telling that there was some damage, more damage to his brain because of some of that. But he's still a happy little boy, and he's going to be here after a while. So we praise God for all that He's done for us and our family.
I mean, we've prayed for people and had them get up that haven't walked in 4 or 5 years that were in a wheelchair, and I've seen them get up and just take off, man, just take off running. I mean, I've actually been there and done that.
When she was a child, she was in a faith-healing home, and in that instance, what happened was that she got an infection in her leg around the knee joint, and her parents put a cookie tray underneath her leg so the pus would run out onto the cookie tray, and she'd scream in agonizing pain. This happened for weeks and weeks. Eventually her leg bone fused, and later in life her leg was amputated.
Thousands and thousands of years of religion, and no cures, no help, no aid, no improvement. Science comes along, fixes things. You know, I find that fact of reality far more persuasive than any promise from any priest, if they keep doing this. And of course they build these clever justifications like the Christian Scientists to place the blame on you so that you're sitting there feeling, okay, it's all my fault. I did something evil in a past life, all these sorts of things to say, this is what this, my condition as I am now is what I deserve, rather than my condition as I am now is something I should fix.
It's funny because growing up as a Christian in a Christian home, I was always hearing these stories of people who had converted out of atheism or out of other religions into Christianity. And they would always talk about, wow, I had this great feeling, I've been born again and Jesus has changed my life. And when I deconverted, I actually had that experience. And it felt like I was actually, for lack of a better word, born again. Because all of a sudden I realized that my life circumstances that I used to think were because God wanted me to be suffering and God wanted all these horrible things which are still happening to me. I still have health problems. I still have the financial issues I'm struggling with. I still have all the same problems I had when I was trusting God to be my provider and my helper. Except now I'm no longer having to live with the overwhelming scourge of feeling like I've been betrayed by the omnipotent lover of the universe who could have helped. And it's been easier to be bereaved and to grieve God than to be betrayed by God. And having now gone through that process, I feel that I've just been given a new lease on life, because now I can enjoy the good moments for what they are. I don't have to wish away my life so I can get to heaven. It's like, man, you know, as crappy as it is, there are good times, and I'm going to live the good times.
If it were faith healing, I'd be for it. That's the problem. It's not remotely faith healing. They shouldn't be able to use that kind of Orwellian terminology to describe something that's torturing children. But when the government steps in and says, well, we're going to say that for you, the child protection standard that applies to others shall be more lenient when you abuse your child through medical neglect, that is despicable.
So for a bit of a change from his usual stunt of being a sexist, racist, murderous, he popped down to Dandenong and just like that, used his powers to heal the cataracts of Sam's mom, of Sam's mom. Oh, thank you, God, for fixing the cataracts of Sam's mom. I didn't realize that it was such a simple thing. I feel such a ding-a-ling, what ignorant scum. Now I understand how prayer can work. A particular prayer in a particular church, in a particular style, with a particular stuff, and for particular problems that are particularly tough, and for particular people, preferably white, and for particular senses, preferably sight. A particular prayer in a particular spot, to a particular version of a particular God. And if you get that right, he just might take a break from giving babies malaria and pop down to your local area to fix the cataracts of your mum.
It is a thing most wonderful that on this once barren rock, orbiting a rather mediocre star on the edge of a rather ordinary galaxy, on this rock, a remarkable process called evolution by natural selection has given rise to the magnificent diversity of complexity of life, the elegance, the beauty, and the illusion of design which we see all around us, has given rise in the last million years or so to a species, our species, with a brain big enough to comprehend that process, to comprehend how we came to be here. That's not just true, it's beautiful. And it...
Millions of law enforcement authorities, social services, science teachers, medical practitioners, and politicians actually believe, ladies and gentlemen, despite overwhelming contrary evidence, that our Earth is only 6,000 years old.
What's going on in schools right now is you're teaching evolutionary processes, right, which I don't agree with. So I have to send my kids to that.
You take your kids to the doctor?
Yeah.
Why? You don't believe it?
They get sick. Why don't I believe in doctors?
Well, why can't
I mean,
God
God makes people doctors. I mean, I'm not against science. I'm not anti-science.
Biology doesn't even make any sense without evolution.
Religious people do tend to say, well, you know, science is just full of theories. Well, religion is just full of stories. They're not even theories. It's one level below. It's just what somebody said.
Evolution is a theory, and it is a way to give a reason for everything that excludes God.
And this is making complete nonsense of the use of the word theory. A theory to a scientist does not mean a tentative hypothesis that might be right or might be wrong. It means a body of knowledge, often that's highly substantiated as evolution is. There's absolutely no doubt about evolution. It is a fact. It's a fact. That's all there is to it. The evidence shows it overwhelmingly.
If I meet someone who's 20, 25 years old and they don't believe in evolution, I'm not angry at them. I feel like you were ripped off. That's what I feel about these people when I meet them and they go to these colleges, you know, or that teach this or don't go to college and are taught this, is that they've had so much stolen from them, in that we are lucky to live in a world where for hundreds of thousands of years, human beings have not had this information, but through the use of reason and science, we're lucky. We get to have the benefit of these past generations providing us this information. And I just feel sorry for someone who has been denied the Enlightenment, in a sense. I mean, it's a tragedy for them.
We study the facts and how, if you study evolution, you will realize that there's absolutely no way that it can be true. If you study, have you studied it?
I have, yeah. I've studied both sides.
What do you believe?
What do I believe about evolution? I think it's true. I think it makes sense.
I was the kid in school, in Sunday school, who would always go, that doesn't make any sense. And then I'd get in trouble because I'd say, like, wait, really? Really? All of the animals on one boat? Really? Like that kind of stuff. And now, like what this one, like, okay, wait, so there's Adam and Eve and two guys. Where does everybody come from? And I got that. I'm like, wait, this isn't all, they were trying to explain to me, and I said, I'm done. You can't.
I think that Adam and Eve did exist, and that's how the world began.
If you lose Genesis, you lose God. No Genesis, no God. Because the whole thing breaks down, the whole worldview, the whole philosophy breaks down, because it originates, for lack of better words, in Genesis.
So you think that teaching evolution in school is teaching atheism?
It is. It certainly is. That's what you're promoting. You're definitely promoting that.
No, what I'm promoting is separation of church and state. Why are you afraid?
There are, of course, a very large number of churchmen who believe in evolution. If you talk to any respectable bishop or archbishop or cardinal or indeed pope, you'll find that they do believe in evolution. So it's quite clearly not true that atheism has to go hand in hand with evolution. I personally have a different view. I think there is an incompatibility, but that's not the view of most churchmen.
I looked through the tags about evolution because I wanted to learn more, and finally I found something, how life could exist without God. And I was just kind of like, what? And it was a really life-changing thing for me.
It really came undone when I got to University of Georgia and I learned about evolution, and I'd never heard of it before. And I couldn't believe that if this was true, why had I not believed it? Why had I not learned about it before? And so I started to question.
Well, I think that when they introduced the Darwin theory, they're kind of saying that this is how it happened. This is the only explanation. This is the only, way that this could have happened. And they're not really having an open mind and introducing, like, if they introduce that one theory, why not introduce, like, Christianity, like, why God made the world, and like why not introduce other things and stuff. So
I guess as a Christian, were you as the homeschooled, were you introduced to the Darwin theory as well as the Christian theory?
Not so much.
You want your kids to learn something else. You want my taxpayer dollars to pay for what you want, but you don't want my taxpayer dollars to go for what I want.
It's commonly said that evolution and creationism are just two different beliefs. You pays your money, you takes your choice, it's just your own opinion. No, they're not just opinions. One of them is supported by facts and evidence and the other one isn't. It's simply not true to say that these are opinions and anybody's entitled to their own opinion. As somebody once said, you may be entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. Facts are facts, and the facts support evolution. They do not support creation.
Why do you believe that?
Because of evidence that I've seen as far as the fossils and as far as genetics and as far as...
So you believe that there's going to be evolving, but if you even look at nature, are we becoming better or worse?
Well, I don't think evolution is about becoming better or worse. I think it's about evolving to the environment that you're in. So like you say there's monkeys, say apes that we had.
But why do we not see them evolving today?
Well, I would say that they are evolving today, that in their environment, say when we split from them 6 million years ago, which scientists say is about when we split, that in their environment, say in the trees, they're perfectly evolved for that environment. Whereas if we were put in their environments, we couldn't survive for them. We couldn't climb the trees.
So why don't they come down from the trees and evolve into people then?
Well, because that's their environment. Those that did come down from the trees and lived in the savannah, they evolved to be specialized the way we did. So they're evolved They've just evolved for a different place.
See, but that thing, there's no proof for that.
You know, public school is just a fact of life, so we know that they're going to be taught some things that we know are not true. But
I should ask you, how do you know that evolution isn't true?
how do I know? Well, you know, I was raised in a Christian home, you know, and I've had experiences with the Lord myself, and I know that He's real, you know, so, and besides, you know, if we come from apes, what happened to the apes now? How come they're not humans too, you know? So.
Charles Darwin wrote his most famous book called, of course, Monkey, 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 You. This caused outrage in the monkey community. Monkeys were furious. They put Charlton Heston on trial in the famous monkey trial.
Like my dad just said, we were not apes, and apes did not turn into people. It's crazy.
We're all cousins. We're not descended from chimpanzees. Chimpanzees and humans are descended from a common ancestor who lived about 6 million years ago. That common ancestor gave rise to a number of descendants, including humans, including chimpanzees, including bonobos, including a fair number of extinct animals. There's no more reason to say that chimpanzees should turn into humans than that humans should turn into chimpanzees. The whole question is complete nonsense.
I remember being taught evolution, and but you know, I had a firm background in Christianity and going to church every Sunday, and I already had my set of beliefs as how the world and earth came about. So as a kid, I just viewed it as this stuff I've got to remember to pass the test and move on. But you wonder, what did other kids, how did they take it? Because not every child in that school had the Christian background that I did.
So you were homeschooled?
Yes.
And what grade are you in now?
I'm not, I'm in college.
College. Okay, which college do you go to?
Ambassador Baptist College.
Oh, okay, so it's a religious college. Now, do they teach you things like evolution and stuff there, or?
No.
Okay.
Well, not really. Like, we study it, but also we study it compared to the Bible.
Certainly in fundamentalist schools, you're seeing a generation of children now in fundamentalist schools who don't get the most basic education. And people think, oh, well, there's some constitutional right to have this happen. Not at all. Most of these laws for, you know, removing teacher certification for religious schools only happened in the 1980s. These are recent and terrible developments.
No, I don't think it's a myth at all. I mean, we have evidence to prove the things in the stories in the Bible, and I think it should be taught. If evolution should be taught, then I think religion should be taught.
If, number one, if Homo sapiens and all species, obviously, emerge only very incrementally, and humanity apparently is supposed to have a soul, then at what point in the evolutionary process did the soul get inserted? If we, as evolution teaches us, since species emerge only incrementally, that means there was no point when there was the first human being. There was no magic first human being, because everything is so incremental. It means there was no Adam. And if there was no Adam, there was no original sin, there was no fall from a state of paradise, then I hate to say it, but Jesus died for nothing. Right. There was nothing to redeem.
Because that was the justification of it, was the fall.
Exactly. And if that falls, the whole structure crumbles, and that is precisely why fundamentalist evangelical Christians are so threatened by evolution, because I think they understand the implications.
I was actually a counselor for Youth for Christ in Kansas City. And we had an atheist who came in there, and he was arguing with everybody. The first round of counselors couldn't do anything with him, so they passed us up to the second bunch, which I was part of. We knew a little bit more. He argued us down. We couldn't do anything. We passed him up to our bosses. They passed him up to the head of the ministry, Al Metzger. Argued for a half hour, and Al Metzger jumped up finally and said, so what if the first 5 books of the Bible are not true? Doesn't mean the whole damn book is a lie. And it just opened the door for me right there. I didn't know what to do at that point, and I started investigating. I became an atheist real quick after that.
If some of the Bible isn't true, then you can't believe any of the Bible. Because if something contains a little bit of lie, then you can't believe any of it.
in 2009, the Secular Student Alliance had their annual conference in Columbus, Ohio, and we led a group of atheists through the Creation Museum right in Kentucky. It's just across the border, led by P.Z. Myers, and we got overwhelming reactions. We had 300 atheists going through the Creation Museum, led by this famous atheist blogger, biologist, P.Z. Myers, and we noticed that the signs had no qualms about this dichotomy. They said, this is what human reason tells us, this is what the Bible tells us. If they're in conflict, go with the Bible, reject human reason.
You go to the Creation Museum, beautifully produced, really well done, lying to kids, lots of money, bussing them in, huge busloads of children being lied to. That really, it's unethical what's happening there, and it's happening to lots of children every day, and it's happening on a pretty darn big scale.
And that's a really dangerous mindset. We're seeing it in politics. I mean, Representative Shimkus says that God promised the world won't end in a flood, and so he's not worried about global warming. We just had Senator Inhofe saying that because of his interpretation of the Bible, he thinks that global warming is a myth and that we don't need to worry about it. These are some of our elected representatives, some of the most powerful people in the country, and they're not paying attention to what our observations tell us. They're not paying attention to what science is informing us, and that's dangerous. I don't know any other way to put it.
As long as we keep believing in demons, devils, and goblins, we'll never see a reason to tackle problems and solve them. Cause we gon' keep on thinking it's part of divine prophecy, and we don't have to solve it, cause one day Jesus will stop and see. Many of y'all invested in living life after death, and nobody's ever proved that we even have a soul yet. So everybody speculate, lots of y'all hesitate, praying with your fingers crossed and hoping there's a heaven waiting. So Sky Daddy's only talking to your group, huh? And everything in your holy book is the truth, huh? And we gonna burn if we don't listen to you, huh? Well, every other group is claiming that too, bruh. So don't be coming at me unless you got some evidence.
I can't imagine that they're that ignorant that they actually believe all this crap.
I don't believe it. The rapture and all that. Maybe George Bush, he's that ignorant.
Oh yeah, well no, with George I make an exception. I'm sure he believed everything.
Tides, and I've always thought tides, I sort of understand it but don't. And I worked out what the second tide, how you do the second tide.
Because the other side of the earth.
Yeah, because the moon is sucking the water up, which makes a high tide one way. When it goes round the back. No, when the earth goes around, or whatever it turns, where's it turning? It's just rotating.
You're almost there. I thought you were going to get
it. No, but it sucks the Earth's crust up.
That's right. It sucks the water away from the crust.
Yes.
But then it sucks the rest of the earth away from the water on the far side.
On the far, that's
yeah.
right.
So that's why there are two lumps.
Yeah, and Newton
it's
sucking the earth away from the thing. That is amazing.
And that's why the tide. That's so simple. And that's why the tides move by an hour a day, because the moon takes almost a month to go around the earth.
Right.
And so the 24 hours a day. So the next day, the moon is almost 1/24 of its circuit around. So it's over here. So by the time the earth gets to it, it's an hour later. So that's why the tides move about an hour a day.
Right.
And he's going to give us a new spirit, provided we get born again, America. In God we trust.
We don't fear gods. We fear those who would impose a coincidentally similar to that which they claim idea of God. That's what we fear.
Most of these atheists don't like God. They want a separation of church and state. However, when a president is sworn into office, he puts his hand on a Bible. We have prayers that start off in this nation. We have Bible verses all over the wall. There is residue of Christianity in this city. If it weren't for Christianity, we wouldn't even have America. And so we are bringing the God back that he rightly needs to reign here in this country.
In the eyes of our designing foundational document, Christianity has no special legal significance. I know that upsets Christians. My answer to them is get over it. Your personal Christian rights, particularly you fundamentalist Christians, your personal fundamentalist Christian rights will never trump the civil rights of your fellow American citizens. And again, they are civil rights, not civil privileges.
The American Constitution is a precious treasure, the envy of the world. The First Amendment to the Constitution, which enshrines the separation between church and state, is the model for secular constitutions the world over and deserves to be imitated the world over.
I have come from a country
where it is legal to punish people for saying God does not exist.
I think that we should go back and look at really what is separation of church and state.
I don't think it is a good concept because that's what this is what America was grounded on. That's what our forefathers believed in, was God. And that shouldn't be taken out because that's what makes America, the great place to be, the place of opportunity. And without God being our foundation, I can only foresee this country as a whole deterring from the greatness that it has all the potential and that it always has been.
Sheenan says, why must we be one nation under God? What's wrong with just being one nation under Canada?
It's the mob mentality that people get. When they're the majority, they think they're unstoppable. And, you know, I think a lot of the people in this country have kind of lost, they're not in touch with the point. You know, I think the point of the country was religious freedom for everybody. And it seems like a lot of people have forgotten that. And they take this whole majority rules things to a scary level. A level where people get up in front of, at these meetings, and say things like, Roger Williams accepted people of faiths, all faiths, yeah, but not atheists because they don't have faith.
I believe that every time that you combine church and state, millions of people die. Bad thing. And it was Christians that had the first synagogue allowed in a state in this country. It was the Baptists in Rhode Island, Roger Williams, who had the first synagogue, because Baptists believe in separation of church and state, because it was the church and the state that killed millions of people over in Europe.
It really is only getting worse. You know, I don't care what the politicians here say, this country was founded on the idea of the separation of those two things. And so when you've got one party who's basically saying, well, I'm more religious than you are. Oh no, I'm more God-fearing than all of you, and I'll show you how. It's like, okay, you all need to just go away because you're not helping anybody. Now you're just feeding into this frenzy of everybody's going to end up hurt by this agenda.
And so if you want your citizens to have it easy, make it easy for them to do what is consistent with the laws of Islam, then it's the state's responsibility.
I was censored, blacklisted, banned, and banished from my homeland because I said, there is no evidence for God's existence, but there are evidences for evolution. And the universe is neither 6,000 years old, nor was it created in 6 days. I also said, Islam is not compatible with human rights, women's rights, secularism, and freedom of expression.
The instruction to cover certain parts, for women to cover certain parts of their body in public, is not coming from their husbands, it's coming from Allah. It's in the Quran, and it's in the prophetic traditions of Muhammad, that hand, face, and feet, the only thing should be exposed when women are out in public.
Again, you can look around the world, you don't see a lot of Muslim nations pretending they're not Muslim. How many believe it's time for America to quit pretending we're not Christian? And if there's people in King, North Carolina who don't like that, there's lots of places you can move to. And if you know who they are, encourage them to move.
That's why I said it's important, I think, to protect that moral fiber. And for me, like I said, in my faith, it's easy for me to vote to try to do that and try to promote legislation in Raleigh to do that.
So would you support going back to some of those laws that were biblically based, like anti-sodomy laws and things like that?
Sure, I think that things like that, are definitely are good, and I think we should support laws that prohibit these bad things.
Religious parents all over this country tell their children that they're not good enough, that they need to go to anti-gay camps and be reprogrammed. I hope those kids come back with so many phone numbers. I hope that camp is just a gay screw fest where there is so much gay sex, even the trees are ashamed. They're like, I shouldn't be looking at this. This forest used to be magical.
Of course, the Bible and the Quran and
these holy books, they don't actually tell you that you should prevent gay people from getting married. I never saw any scripture say that. What they say is that you should kill them.
For example, in Iran, but also in Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and Somalia, homosexuality is punished under Islamic law with the death penalty. It would seem that they're following the book correctly. Is that something you would agree with?
Well, I agree that in Islam, there is no public allowance for homosexuality.
The current Dalai Lama said that although he supports tolerance for gay people, he sees homosexual sex as wrong, unwholesome, a bad action, and contrary to Buddhist ethics.
They read it right here in Washington. John Boehner had them read the whole Constitution right on the floor of the House. But they don't get it. They don't understand it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, it says.
Now, there's a lot of Islamic countries that don't have separation of church and state. They're theocracies. Do you think that this is a universal principle that should be applied to all countries?
I do. Firmly. I'm an American Muslim, and so I very firmly believe in our First Amendment.
The Islamic government does not have the right to legislate saying that this is okay, something that is against the fundamental of the belief.
Do you know Khalid Griggs?
Yes, yes.
So I'd interviewed him for In God We Trust, which was about separation of church and state.
Yes.
And he said very different than you. He actually said that it was okay for Islamic countries to be a theocracy because that's how they were founded, and that passing laws based on the Quran, that they shouldn't have the First Amendment in those countries. So.
Well, there's a billion Muslims in the world, so we don't all agree on the same things.
I think the separation of church and state should be a fundamental thing for all societies, and I do understand the nuanced question there involving, is that us projecting, our society's morals or ethics rather onto some they already have an existing, their system is good too. I understand the nuance behind that question, but no, it is probably the most important change that ever happened, and I think America played a big role in the revolutionary concept of getting rid of the theocracies and even the divine right of kings of monarchies, and just we hold these truths to be self-evident.
I just got a tweet from Iran, from Majid, who says, "We wish we could all be there, and we wish for the day non-believers can be themselves here in Iran."
And I put an announcement in the Campus Crier, which was our daily email. And I said, "Are you atheist, agnostic, or generally non-religious? If so, and you'd like to start a Freethinkers Club, contact Sarah Molia." That was like exactly what it said. It was like one line. Because I knew like one other atheist at the school, and I thought we were the only ones. But I was like, I have to try. I can't just sit here and not try. And the response was overwhelming. Campus blew up.
And I serve on the EU boards on the national level as a trustee. So I'm very much a supporter of the Americans United for Separation of Church and State.
If you want to live in a theocracy, move to Uganda or move to Rome.
But now what's the difference of Israel being a Jewish nation then? Why wouldn't that be as bad as this being a Christian nation?
Because as of the European Holocaust, when Israel was founded and inhabited again, there was a need for a place that Jewishness could be experienced in its fullest. So when the nation of Israel was formed, it was formed on the contingency that it would be a place for Jews to have their homeland. It is a Jewish homeland.
So it's like a safe haven.
Well, Israel is a safe haven. It's always been our home. No, every morning of our lives and morning services, we make a statement. It says, "If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand fail and my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth." It is a statement which very clearly indicates that we are never to forget where home is and where we're supposed to really be. And in the end of time, as we know it, all the Jews of this universe will return back to Israel and the universal law of the Torah will be established, and it will go forth from Zion.
I stood up and said, I am an atheist student, and this prayer directly discriminates against me. And in response to that, I remember somebody gasped and somebody mumbled under their breath that I was a witch. And it was really weird for me because, I mean, I knew the word atheist was not accepted in society, but I didn't realize how much it wasn't, and I was floored that night. I went home and I was just like, what happened at that meeting? It was so surprising. I expected the adults in my community to be like, oh, well, obviously, you know, we're lawyers, we have to understand the Constitution and the First Amendment and all that stuff, and they just didn't, and it was scary.
The separation of church and state was that the state will not tell the church what to do, and the church won't tell the state what to do. So when the state tells the church that they are not allowed to do something, say in public schools, that's violating that separation of church and state. If an atheist doesn't want their kid to hear that, maybe they can not put them in that school.
We had our first meeting, and 2 or 3 dozen people showed up. Like, it was really overwhelming. I was so happy. And there were so many people that I had known for years, because I was a senior at this point, and I just didn't know they were atheists. And they were just like, I thought I was the only one. And so it was really, really cool that we had a place where we could finally meet. And so we have the meeting. I went home, back to my room. It was like 10 o'clock. I wrote like something on my Facebook about how excited I was. I said something on Twitter. I was just so, like, that feeling, like, you're so excited, like the kind of the feeling after the Reason rally, like, yes, everything's possible. This is so awesome. I'm making a difference. This is awesome. And I wake up the next morning, still, like, I wake up with a smile on my face. I'm so excited about this. I wake up and I'm gonna go take a shower. I'm excited to go to my classes. I open the door and a bucket of piss falls on me. And at first I thought it was water, and so my first thought was, honestly, well, this is mildly inconvenient. Like, I wasn't even mad. I was like, I ain't even mad. Like, I got this awesome group. And then I picked it up and I saw it was yellow and I could smell it, and I just cried. I just cried, and I wanted to stay in my room and not go to class that day, but my room stunk like piss.
We were just showing some pictures of angry parents who were very loudly talking about the Pledge of Allegiance and saying the Pledge of Allegiance in this meeting that clearly became very, full of anger. What do you make of the hostility that's come out around this? You've gotten death threats, is that correct?
That's correct.
And
it's been really difficult, obviously, just to constantly have this feeling of hatred towards me in my community. The meeting itself was difficult, but it's kind of what's been going on for a long time now. And, I think I'm ready for it at this point. But you never really get used to hearing about how bad you are, really. It always hurts. And the death threats, obviously, have always hurt my feelings. I've just kind of gotten to a point where I can cope with it. It's not so much that I'm, okay with it happening, but I'm able to cope with it now.
There's a congressperson, state rep, who, Peter Palumbo, and he said this about you. He said you are an evil little thing, and you've had to have a police escort take you to school. Have you responded to him?
I haven't responded to him directly, but the response so far to that comment it's almost a bit of a mockery. I feel it's immature and inappropriate for a state representative, who represents me also, by the way, to be calling me something as petty as an evil little thing.
It was not freedom from religion, it was freedom of religion.
We had a dead fish in the mail once, and we get an awful lot of phone calls, and some of them were death threats.
I had grown men and women telling me that they hope my family loses everything we have and ends up homeless. People saying, you did this for the money, you little brat. I got $25 because I didn't want to take any money from my city. It's my city. If hurting my city hurts me, So I told the lawyers that I wanted to ask for as little as possible, so we asked for $25.
But every time we did something big on campus that that people talked about, or something big that we put in the crier, something bad would happen to me. People wrote like "Die Atheist Bitch" on the posters. They would tear down, our posters were never up for more than an hour. They could have said anything. They could have said "We like cupcakes, come to the SSA," and they would be torn down.
The first ruling shot down Alquist's claim, but an appeals court agreed with her, and that banner has been pulled.
This country was founded to be a secular country. We're supposed to keep church and state separate so that people can have their rights and their freedom to choose. And I think that this lawsuit is a reflection of that.
ABC 15 now wants to know what you think about the ruling. Supporters of the banner say it was a school tradition. All right, Blair, let's get involved at this one.
Well,
whenever you have religion, of course, people are going to be very, uptight on both sides.
Well, people need to understand, first off, I don't like to get into politics and religion myself personally, but you got to understand that as a medium, I'm a spiritual person. And as a Canadian, I always find it fascinating. I was just reading about this earlier on. I noticed on your American money, it says, "In God we trust." I noticed that's on there. I really believe that there's a big war going on between atheists and the believers. And, I don't believe that woman is true.
Newt Gingrich suggests that the Ground Zero mosque that's near Ground Zero, not even at Ground Zero, that mosque, they wouldn't permit us to build a church in Saudi Arabia. And for me to hear that, I think, wow, did Newt Gingrich just say he wanted to make America like Saudi Arabia? Is that what he's saying? Is that we should be like them, but with Jesus or whatever? I mean, that's scary. That's not a step backwards. That's a giant leap for mankind backwards.
Oppressed Christian minorities and the Jewish population of Spain, of southern Spain, invited the Muslims and asked the Muslims, especially the governor, the Umayyad governor at that time, Musa, to come and to rescue them because they were being so persecuted by this sect of Christians at that time. So when they came into southern Spain, of course there was resistance, but they accepted the authority of the Muslims. They had invited them in. The Muslims didn't come in and impose anything.
So it was a very violent conquest, basically an extension of the Crusades. That's how the Spanish conquistadors felt about it. Let's not forget, this is not a God that revealed itself to Latin America. It was introduced that way. I mean, it would have been refreshing for the conquistadors to land on our shores and find our Indians, primitive as they were, professing the same faith and saying, "Oh yeah, he revealed himself to us as well." Well, that's not really what happened, was it? Indians picked up the faith to basically survive the conquest. Once they were baptized and given souls, they couldn't be killed as animals anymore. So when somebody expresses pride in Christianity here in Latin America, it is to me the equivalent of saying, look, we approve of the methods that God used in order to introduce himself to us.
If we would find an Islamic oppressor or Jewish oppressor or an atheist oppressor, we'd go after them with equal vigor and tenacity, but we don't. It's always the same type of enemy. We're fighting the Christian Taliban. And the Christian Taliban goes by the nom de guerre of Christian fundamentalists or dominionist Christians. The average American's never even heard of that. It comes from the book of Genesis when God supposedly tells Adam and Eve, go and take dominion over all the fish that swimmeth, the birds that flieth, etc. Take dominion. They do not want a democracy. They want a theocracy.
And I think that by turning our back on the principles that God has said is wrong, I think that we are at risk of, maybe losing some of His protection.
The idea of a deity shine its light on one nation, one state, one city, one person. Come on, that's irrational.
She's like, someone covered our bathroom in shit. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, our bathroom's covered in shit. And I'm like, yeah, what kind of shit? Thinking like sometimes students will grab toothpaste and smear it everywhere because they're so clever. And she's like, it's actual shit, like feces. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, it's smeared all over the counter, it's smeared on the mirror, it's smeared above the lights, they stuck your toothbrush in it, they covered your toiletry items with it. It's everywhere.
When I think of this movement, the first thing that comes to mind are the students in it. Can all the students, like, raise your hands? Yeah, I would say that's most of you. And I think what the students in this movement are doing is amazing. And I think it's what brings people together in the biggest way.
The school told me they were doing an investigation. They told me they were doing a rigorous investigation because the dorm had like 350 people living in it normally. But there were only like 30 or 40 people there for the weekend, and most of them were on a team. And like we had to use cards, our card reader, to get into the building, so they knew who was in and out of the building all weekend. And they told me they were doing this rigorous investigation, and I ran into the head of security a couple days later, and I was like, oh, hey, Dean, how's the investigation about my bathroom going? And he's like, what about your bathroom? And I was like, the stuff that happened in my bathroom this weekend. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, the shit that was smeared all over my bathroom? And he's like, I haven't heard anything about that. So they didn't really care. They kind of kept, like, it just sucked. They never caught anyone who did anything to my stuff. And, like, I liked my boss and I liked all the people there, but I think they just kind of felt like, well, you're putting yourself out there, so this is your fault. Like, you know, I think they cared, but not enough to actually try.
I thought that it was like my father, my sister, family members, myself, people in other countries, and that was all of the atheists in the world. You know, I was so naive, and it's completely changed my life. This decision I made, I went from feeling like I must have been the only one to now being surrounded by free thinkers everywhere. And I have so many friends, and I remember having wanted some friends who thought similarly, who were interested in the same things as me, and that's what I have. And so much love and so many friends, and it's the best thing I ever did.
For most of my life, I had been an apathetic atheist. So there's no God, big deal. But when I moved to South Carolina, I found out that our state constitution prohibited atheists from holding public office. And I went to the ACLU to see how this obviously unconstitutional provision could be changed. And I found out there was a lot of pushback from the leadership in South Carolina. They took that very seriously. So I first ran for governor, and the judge there said he would rule on the merits of the case if I won the election, which of course I lost. I found out I couldn't even be a notary public in South Carolina because I couldn't hold any public office. So I took 7 years of litigation, and South Carolina spent close to $100,000 trying to keep me from becoming a notary public. And that really energized me when I saw the hate mail about atheists in South Carolina. And this, that started as a lark for me, turned into my life's passion. And that's why I'm so involved with secular causes.
Like, I'm not trying to say that I think all Christians are incapable of love. Like, at my college, there are some really, really loving Christians, some like really, really good people. Three of my residents, they had a corner room, and we called them the Christian corner. And they're 3 guys, and they were just the nicest guys. Like, after the piss happened, they brought me cookies, and they wrote me this really, really nice note. I totally cried about it. But they wrote me this really nice note that was like, Sarah, we're really sorry this happened. This shouldn't happen to anyone. And that's totally not a Christian thing to do, and we're really, really sorry about it.
Everybody thinks the golden rule is a fair way to do things. And so I was thinking about how do you apply the golden rule in the church-state area, and I've kind of come up with this. It would go something like this: I must not ask government to promote my religion if I don't want government to promote somebody else's religion, and I must not permit government to harm somebody else's religion if I don't want government to harm my religion. You know, to me, that just seems so commonsensical, so fundamentally fair that it's hard to dispute.
Jessica, with the help of thousands of donors, it is our honor to present you with this check for $62,618 for college. I just want to point out that the memo line says bravery. Thank you for your bravery, your courage, and for inspiring so many of us to remain vigilant about the fight for church-state separation.
You only get religious freedom with separation of church and state, and I understand that every degree away from the separation of church and state is a degree away from religious freedom. I get that, and that's why the whole concept of Rock Beyond Belief, the whole concept of the Reason Rally, the whole concept of American Atheists, every bit of activism I do, every bit of activism that we sponsor, it's all about patriotism.
How sad it would be if, in the birthplace of secular constitutions, the very principle of a secular constitution were to be betrayed in a theocracy. And it's come close to that.
And I applied for a job at the Secular Student Alliance right after I graduated, and I ended up getting it. So I packed up my stuff and moved to Ohio. And then I got to go on tour with Richard Dawkins for his Magic Reality tour. So I got my dream job, and they stuck their hands in poop. So who's the real loser?
I thought somebody had won this argument by now.
You can't win.
Did you convert him?
No. He won't be converted, neither will I.
Are they still filming?
I don't know.
Are you filming?
They got away.
That's right. We became so boring that they...